definition. There will just be a very abstract city in gold and a bit of blue representing the light around the city. So this may be an earthly city, the New Jerusalem, or it may be a spiritual city. So it may have some blue around it as well. I'm going out now. Hopefully it's not going to splash all over. Inside to represent buildings, and then I'll do a very pale blue to represent God's light. And the reason I used gold and brass or copper was that the copper was just to bring out the gold, because the gold is so soft on its own. But really the gold, we don't know what the New Jerusalem will be made of. Will it be made of gold or whatever metal God decides? You know, it will be something that we can't even imagine. So it will just be spectacular and beautiful. So the gold represents His majesty and His glory, and the white represents His purity and His holiness. And that's why this is just a purely representational painting. I'm using a very dry, hard brush that I haven't used for a long time. It's very thin, so it's hopefully going to make very faint lines, just to make the representation of the buildings. And again, we don't know what shape the buildings will be, whether they'll be round or rectangular or oblong. These are just very, very light impressions of what buildings will look like. So I don't know if I can do this with my phone in my hand, and whether those lines will stay if I do them so faint, whether they'll just blur into the paint. So I'll see. The lines didn't hold up, and I decided that it didn't matter. I'll just let it dry, and then I'll paint on the lines where I think, lines should go. I also wanted to make a slight wall around the city, just not because the city will need protection, but just because to show that it will be embraced by God's love. So that's my idea of the New Jerusalem. And yes, it would have been better if I'd had more gold there. I don't have any left, so I will do some add-ins with the painting when I use the brush, when it's dry. The way this painting has dried, it's almost as if it has formed in the background the hills of Jerusalem. You can see there that shape in there. It's just perfect, a perfect backdrop. Although this little bunch of lacing and cells here almost forms a rose, that part there. It's a rose. Anyway, but definitely this is like the backdrop of hills in front of behind the buildings which are in front. So what I thought is representing Jerusalem, the New Jerusalem, the spiritual dimensions of Jerusalem. That Jerusalem will not need light. It will not need sunlight. The purity and the holiness of God will be the light that shines in and through everything. And so you won't really need windows in buildings, but yet these little circles, these little, I've forgotten the word now, cells have almost formed windows of their own. And so I thought I could paint the buildings around these windows so that they're incorporated in the building. And the buildings are not going to all be the same size or the same shape, and I'm not going to fill the whole canvas with buildings, just a few here and there. It's not representing the entire New Jerusalem, just a segment of it. I'm not representing any temple or anything like that. So I don't want this to turn into a religious video. It's just purely about representing the beauty of the New Jerusalem, both physically and spiritually. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to paint, but for that I need to use a ruler. So I'm going to put the camera down and I'll come back in a minute. Well, it's quite difficult because I'm no fan of abstract painting, and also because I'm really painting something that I have no idea what it will look like, and I'm basing it on my limited knowledge of human understanding of what buildings look like. I have no understanding of what God may design or create. He will create things that we have never dreamt of, and colours that we've never seen, metals that we've never heard of or seen, buildings that we can't even begin to visualize. So I'm not trying to pretend that I can know the mind of God. I can't know what his designs would be, but I can only base my representation on what exists in Jerusalem and what has existed in Jerusalem in the past, like doorways with arches and sometimes dome ceilings, rooftops, sometimes flat rooftops, many flat rooftops in King David's time. That's where he saw Bathsheba bathing on the rooftop, and so on. Because it was hot, they had to have somewhere to be outside, and so on. And then there could be triangular rooftops, and so that's just one of each. I'm not going to do more than that. I'm not going to clutter it up, and then I'm going to do the sky in pale blue, and then I'm going to move on to another interpretation of the New Jerusalem. I decided that even though this is an imaginary painting, I'm painting something that I can't even imagine. I'm trying to imagine something that I can't imagine. So it's a double negative. It's a bit of a contradiction in terms of I've outlined what I thought were houses and buildings and whatever, and they look just awful. So even though it's got this lovely acrylic pour background, I'm going to need to do something more solid, and I bought this little stencil to help me do that, because my attempts at these tiny things are not very good, since I can't really see what I'm doing. So I'm going to use the stencil and paint inside it, and paint solid gold where there is what I think